I can't tell you how many outings I've been on with people who are constructing the perfect image of them having a great time, but they are fucking miserable, right? Because like literally they're about to be swept into the ocean because there's waves, but they're just trying to make it look like they're having such a great time. I mean, you could spend your energy and time trying to convince other people of the kind of life you live, or you could devote that energy to living the kind of life that you want to live.
Yeah.
And it's enough for you to know it. It's enough for you to know that you're happy. It's enough for you to know that you're fulfilled. It's enough for you to know that you're doing things that are adventurous or that are meaningful. It's enough for you to know that your kids are thriving. We don't have to look to other people for that validation. It really, I mean, the call is coming from inside the house.
All right, welcome to the Growth Mixtape Podcast, and I'm your host, Bob Mathers. Today I welcome back Michelle Grocholsky to the show. And as always, Michelle is brutally honest, hilarious, and we always have a great time. I threw Michelle a bit of a curveball this time around with a new format where I bring two topics, she brings two topics, and we don't share them in advance. We just press record and we see what happens. It's a bit scary and messy, and that's the whole point. We talk about how social media creates lazy friendships and how we will always need friends of pleasure. We dig into the parallels between technology and alcohol and how hard it can be to have healthy relationships with them. And we talk about the importance of being our own fan club so we don't become too reliant on applause from other people. Please enjoy Michelle Grocholsky. Well, I'm so excited about this. Are you ready to get going?
Yeah, I think so. I'm excited too. I'm not going to lie though. I'm actually nervous. I haven't been nervous in a long time and I'm feeling jittery.
Why do you think that is? You and I have had dozens of conversations, and I'm guessing very few, if any of them, made you nervous.
No, never. I think it's just the idea that other people are going to listen in, and it's not even like, you know, what's Bob going to ask me? It's like, am I going to be able to do it justice? Am I going to later reflect and wish I did a better job so that I could have been more insightful for somebody else, you know, or, you know, and like, you know what I mean? Like, I hope I'm just not surface. Like, I hope I can think on the spot in a way that will enable me to add value. So I've got my water, I'm wearing my deodorant, like I'm game. I'm hoping it's going to happen.
You know, it's funny. It's funny you mentioned that, Michelle, because yeah, this is your second time on the podcast, and the first time was more of a traditional kind of interview, I guess. This format is much different. I wish I could put your mind at ease that you're gonna. No, you're not going to look back on this and wish you had done things differently. I've done this 4 or 5 times now. That happens to me every time, which I think is actually part of the fun, but I know exactly how you feel. I have been asked questions that I think in retrospect, God, it was such an opportunity for me to say this or ask another question. And it sucked. Like that answer fucking was terrible. And I said the first thing that popped out of my head instead of giving time to reflect. And I don't know. So I'm sorry, but that is going to happen. And that's kind of the whole point.
You get it. Yeah. But you understand, right? Like you've been in it. And so that's helpful. I know I'm in good hands with you. It's going to be a great conversation. So I'll just deep breath.
Well, okay. So I've often thought that it would make the guest feel more comfortable if I went first, if I asked my question first. But I've thought about that. I'm like, maybe not. Maybe I should let them go first. So which would you prefer?
Oh, let me ask you a question first.
Okay. All right.
How does that sit with you?
That you're the first person that's gone first. So I like that.
Okay. I get to be the trailblazer.
Yeah.
Fabulous. Okay. Well, let me know when you're ready and I'll fire away.
Fire away. We've been recording this whole time. We're ready to go.
Oh, eek. Okay. Well, as you know, Bob, I am in a field that constantly invites people to question the way that they think, right? So to be thoughtful about the beliefs that they might hold, and to consider new ways of thinking about people, arriving at judgments and conclusions, to update their belief systems. So I'm curious, given that you are this lifelong learner and someone who is deeply introspective, something I really admire about you, what is one belief that you used to hold that you no longer hold, either as firmly or at all? And what has caused you to perhaps change or adapt that belief? And what has that cracked open for you?
I love that question. What is one belief that I held? I the first thing that comes to mind, Michelle, is that, and this is some recency bias for sure, because I'm just coming off a bit of a retreat where I reflected on this a lot. But I grew up thinking that I was not a creative person. And that I needed to surround myself with people that could come up with creative ideas, and that maybe my superpower was simply to get people to work together and to bring out the best in people, but that I always needed to rely on other people to come up with ideas and solutions to problems. And now I've realized that I've got this well of unused or untapped creativity that is probably one of the most exciting things that I've discovered about myself over the last couple of years. And I'm just trying to figure out how to channel it. And it's interesting because I was talking to a client of mine. So she was looking to do a career transition. And I don't know how the work with my clients, as you can imagine, Michelle, is quite unstructured, a lot like this conversation and many of the conversations that you and I have had. They kind of wander all over the place. We just kind of chase our curiosity. And she was kind of a little bit younger, maybe older than you, but younger than me. And we started talking about this idea of creativity. And yeah, well, she used to do a bunch of creative stuff, but she just kind of got out of the habit. And then we started exploring ways for her to get to dust it off and build it into her routines again. And it was just like this spark that returned to her. And she was journaling and writing, and we discovered new things and passions that she had forgotten about. And it resulted in a completely different path for the next season of her career. And I only mention that because I think it's really common. Like, I think a lot of us get out of the habit of using that creativity, and it is the answer to the questions that keep us up at night. And I've been thinking a lot about that. It's so funny that you asked that. Now, I'm not sure whether that was the kind of belief that you were expecting me to come up with, but that's the first thing that comes to mind. So I'll pause and let you kind of reflect and respond to that.
It's surprising to hear because you definitely have always come across as a deeply creative person, not only through the music that you play, but also in the way that you help coach your clients around, whether it's customer experience or entrepreneurship in general. You are very creative in how you ask your questions and how you help people to see the journey and solutions. But I imagine that there was a time when you did believe you were creative as a kid. I think most of us have this sense of we can do anything, we can create anything, the sky's the limit. If that's true, when did that change? And what has helped it to now shift back to I am in fact a creative person?
I don't know if I can pinpoint one event, but I agree there probably is one. I do think it just sort of gets eroded over time as I became less confident. I don't know if I look at home movies of myself as a kid and running around and singing and dancing and the kinds of things that we all used to do before we cared what anybody thought. And I do think about like whether it was one event or whether it was just a slow chipping away of that confidence as I started to care more about what I looked like and what people thought of me. I don't know. There was one thing that happened early on. I was playing my guitar. So I often talk about the fact that my grandfather bought me my guitar for my 9th birthday. He wanted me to play bluegrass like Tommy Hunter on TV, which I never did. But there was a time at our cottage when my grandfather wanted me to play in front of everybody. And I had been practicing, and I did. And he was hard of hearing, so he kept asking me to play louder. And I don't know how old I was, maybe 10 or 11 years old. And I tried, and he kept wanting me to play louder. And then my dad and him got into an argument, and it actually ended up in a fist fight between my grandfather and my father. If you can imagine that. There was definitely whiskey involved. So it's quite possible. I don't think I woke up the next day saying I'm never playing in front of anyone again, or that I'm not creative, but it's possible that that lack of creativity has its origins in some sort of, whiskey fueled trauma involving, my guitar and my grandfather and my dad, I guess.
And the loudness of that. So here you are, not only just being creative, but you're just going for it. You're
Yeah.
playing as loud as you can. And I wonder if that had a bit of a dimming effect.
Yeah.
Turn it down. You're too loud. It's too much. It's causing conflict.
Oh man,
Yeah.
I haven't
Does
thought
that?
about that story in forever. Now, of course, just like any story, does that actually resemble what happened? If there was an actual recording of what happened in that room, I don't know. I've thought about that story so many times. I'm sure it's changed and morphed into something that maybe no longer resembles reality. But yeah, that's super interesting. Now, what made it come back?
Hmm.
I do think it had something to do with kind of getting sober. I say almost 5 years ago, but it's just over 4. But I'm in my 5th year, so that's why I say almost 5. That always feels like it's a bit longer. But I do think that it's just amazing what happens when you've got seven days a week to work with. And I started challenging all kinds of assumptions about myself, and I started this podcast, within a year of getting sober, and I kind of cracked open my curiosity, and with that came, I wonder if I am more creative than I've ever been, or at least explored different ways to be creative. So I do think that was a big kind of fork in the road. I don't remember the creativity being something that I was consciously looking to explore before that.
What has it opened up for you? This awareness that you are, in fact, a deeply creative person.
Well, I think it's just an example of something that I've been telling myself for so long that I accepted to be true, that is just completely fabricated and made up. And I think we all have these things about us that we say we're good at, or that we suck at, or we can do, or we can't. And I love what Rick Rubin says. He says, all you know for sure is that you've tried something or you haven't tried. Never say you're not good at something. All you know is that you haven't tried it yet. That's the only thing that's true. And I've tried to apply that to lots of different parts of my life. And it's interesting, like conversations like this, Michelle, it's not something that I ever really thought about. It's not something me and my friends really talked about. It's not something that I ever talked about with even people I worked with either. But when you open that door, it's amazing, I think, the places that these conversations go, because it's universal. We all have these things that are just, these biases, I guess, that you mentioned, or these assumptions that have just been there so long. We're completely blind to it until somebody comes along and asks about it and goes, yeah, shit, I guess I was 5 years old when something happened, and I haven't been curious or creative or had self-confidence ever since.
Although that's interesting in and of itself, because you have been curious and
Yeah,
creative since. It's just you haven't maybe labeled it that. You've had this belief that those things weren't creative
right.
because of this experience that you've had. And what I love about your journey is It wasn't as though you needed to hire someone to tell you,
Right.
hey, Bob, you're creative. You have this capacity, you have this desire. It took you making that decision to be sober and to spend time going inward to uncover that thing that was always inside of you. I love that. And I just think it takes such courage to be with yourself without the distraction and the
Right.
noise or the numbing that is insert thing here:
Right.
shopping, gambling, alcohol, drugs, whatever. I think it takes a lot of courage.
Well, I appreciate that. That's very kind. And I also do think, though, that that whatever stories we've been telling ourselves, yeah, because I have talked to people about this kind of rediscovering my creativity and curiosity, and people that have known me for years are like, "What are you talking about? You're like a super creative guy," and they rhyme off examples. But yeah, it's this difference between the way that the world sees us and those kind of stories that we carry around about ourselves.
But how beautiful that the superpower that other people see in you is the thing that you are so inherently good at and the thing that you desire to spend more time being and doing. It's just about changing your belief system around it. It's
Yeah.
not as though you're having to build this muscle, right? It's there. It just sounds like the volume was turned down for a lot of years.
Yeah. Yes. And just very quickly, it reminds me of something. So I went on this songwriting retreat, and it was 3 days. I've told myself my whole life I can't write a song. I've tried. I've never been able to do it. And in 3 days, I leave with this thing that I wrote. I played it. I sang it. And they recorded it, produced it, and now it's on YouTube for everyone to hear. And it was a really super emotional experience. But there was one little moment in there. I mean, it's real. I went in there. It's like, this is real hippie stuff, right? Like a lot of journaling and reflecting and deep conversations and yoga and vegan food. Everything about it was amazing. But there was one morning that we did a bit of yoga, and then he played some songs, and one of them was Whitney Houston, "I Want to Dance with Somebody,"
One
and
of the
then it
best
was,
ever.
oh my God, and then Bon Jovi, I think "Living on a Prayer," and the idea was just like let loose. There were 4 songwriters there, and then the 3 or 4 people that were kind of facilitating, coordinating the whole thing. And when it started, it's like, oh my God, this is deeply weird. Like all these strangers, I'm dancing to these songs, I'm flailing around, the whole thing, like dance like nobody's watching. And that's what all of us were doing. And the first 30 seconds were like, oh my God, I hope to God nobody ever sees this. Tessa was there, and I hope to God she's not filming this. And then by the end of it, I was just like, I wish everybody in the world could see this. Like it was just such an emotional thing. And Tessa does have some video of it, which is absolutely hilarious. But that, yeah. And maybe it comes back to this, like living like a 5-year-old, back when we would run around and we would run up to people and say, "Hi, do you want to be my friend? I like your hat." Right. And we didn't know any better. We didn't care what anybody thought. Oh my God, how amazing would it be to live like that?
How freeing. I think dance is such a cathartic way of letting go.
Yeah, it was surprisingly exhausting.
It's good cardio.
Like 2 songs was all I could do. I'm like, how do people go out and dance like all night long? This is a lot of work.
It's a lot of work. In heels too sometimes, right?
Oh, that's crazy.
Yeah.
Okay, so that does actually relate to one of the things I was going to ask you about. So that's a beautiful segue, Michelle. Good.
Ooh,
Nice
to a
work.
question that I don't know what it
I
is.
know. So it does relate to friends. And I think much is talked about as we get older that our circle of friends tends to get smaller for whatever reason that is. But I've been thinking more, and I came across this idea it's actually a book by Arthur Brooks called The Meaning of Your Life. And when I looked up where this idea of the different types of friendships came from, it's actually from Aristotle. So it's not a new idea. But it was new to me. And I've been thinking about not only how my circle of friends is getting smaller, but how the makeup of that circle is changing. So the three kinds of friendships are friends of utility, friends that, they might be work friends. There's mutual benefit for us to be friends. There's friends of pleasure, people that we just get together and howl and have a great time. Drinking buddies. I have tons of drinking buddies. They might be friends of pleasure. And then there are friends of virtue. These enduring friendships, these places where you can be yourself, you can talk to anybody, maybe like you're the old man in the coffee shop. That sounds like maybe a friendship of virtue. So utility, pleasure, and virtue. And I'm wondering for you how the makeup of your circle of friends is changing over time. If it was a pie chart, how are those different pie pieces changing?
Wow. It's not only a question, it's an education. I've not actually thought of my friends in those ways before, but it makes a lot of sense. The way that I had been conceiving of friendships up to this point has been that old adage, that trite saying that you have friends for a reason, a season, or a lifetime, which has been a helpful thing to remember as I get older. And I've been growing out of some of my friendships, quite frankly. I've been sharing, this perspective with my kids also, that sometimes people evolve and relationships evolve, and that friend might have been a friend for a reason or a season, but they don't all have to be lifetime friends. But layering on this idea of utility, virtue, or was it pleasure was the other?
Yes, utility, pleasure, virtue. Yep.
Oh, fascinating. Yeah, when I think about earlier in life, I do remember that a lot of the friendships that I had earlier on in elementary school, high school, were friendships of utility. So, for example, a friend on the street, I was bored, wanted to hang out with somebody. This person lives two houses down. Friends, parents don't have to drive us anywhere. Very low barrier to playing together. There was some utility there. In elementary school, I was relentlessly bullied. I was that kid who had all the hallmarks of being a target. Awful hair. My teeth were often the target of being bullied as well. And I came from a home, quite a divisive, kind of broken home. And, my dad had a very negative reputation. And so a lot of people would target me because of not only the way I looked, but also the family that I came from. And so I noticed that I made friends with people who could protect me, quite frankly. So the tough kids who would intimidate other kids, who could stand up for me, who were really quick-witted. And I learned a lot around how to stand up and how to defend myself. A lot of very problematic habits that I would not encourage my now children who are 6 and 8 to try to adopt. I definitely had a very wide vocabulary of swear words and insults that not handy. But at that time, it was survival, right? And so I just thought about who can I befriend that's going to help keep me safe. And not only that, but give me that sense of belonging that I so desperately wanted in those earlier years. In terms of pleasure, yeah, I think that's been a hallmark of my 20s. People who listen to the same music, and so we would go to the same concerts together, or who also liked to go to great restaurants and we would share a meal. But I didn't often find that with all of those friends, I could get to this deeper level of, I don't just want to talk about current events. I don't want to talk about people. That has been consistent. I'm not a gossiper. Of course, I have my moments, of course, but I would rather talk about how people make sense of the world, who they are and why they are the way they are, what their hopes and aspirations are, what they're learning, what their mistakes are. I love to get to know people and the inner workings of their mind. I am not so interested in, who bought the car that might be outside of their budget. And so for me, I actually noticed that I have often gravitated towards friendships that are intergenerational in nature, folks who are older than me, because I found that their priorities were different and the conversation would be quite different. And so while I had those friendships of pleasure, often with my own age group, I found that some of my deepest relationships now in my 40s have been with people who are generations older than me. And we talk about things of substance. Not only does that help me to understand them better, which is such a gift. I think one of the most beautiful things you can offer to somebody is an inside look about who you are. I think, everyone has something like deeply unique and profoundly beautiful inside of them. And it takes trust to be able to allow someone to see that unfiltered with all of its, sometimes the beauty also comes with a lot of pain and a backstory. So having those relationships not only helps me fall deeper in love with people because you get to know who they are from more of a multidimensional view, but it also has helped me to evolve as a person and to learn and grow. And with that, it's made me a much more compassionate person, a much more patient person, a very open-minded, non-judgmental person. When you get to know the backstory of somebody, you are much less likely to draw conclusions or have judgments about what they should do or, whether they're right or wrong or good or bad. They just are. So I would say I'm much more in a place now of virtuous friendships, if I'm putting that correctly. Is that right? Virtue, friendships of
Yeah.
virtue. Yeah, where I feel like the people that I'm spending time with are people who make me better, and every conversation brings us closer for the most part. Of course, sometimes we still talk about reality TV, but
Right. Well, so do you think, or do you have examples of people that have gone from friends of pleasure, for lack of a better term, that sounds super greasy, friends of pleasure to friends of virtue? Or do you find as you really prioritize those kind of enduring, authentic relationships, do you actually have to just make new friends? It's like, no, these pleasure friends aren't going to be able to make the leap, and I'm just going to go find new ones. Maybe they're 30 years older than me.
Both. And I should also say, shout out to all my fellow millennials out there. It's not that, it's not that we don't have depth. I think sometimes we're so mired in the busyness of career and caretaking. Right now I'm the caretaker for my father and of my two kids. It's a busy life. And so sometimes I find it can be hard amongst my own cohort for us to have the time to like really introspect and get into it. It's just quicker and safer to stay surface. So I think, it's not necessarily that those pleasure friendships can't get there. I think sometimes it's a matter of timing. I've noticed that some of my friends being on the parenting journey, becoming moms in particular, has actually catalyzed in them this desire to go deeper. So whether it's seeing a therapist or chatting with friends, there's been this recognition that when you raise another human, that you're in fact looking in the mirror a lot of the times. The things that trigger you about your children often reflect something deep inside of you that's worth becoming curious about. And so with those friends who we once would just talk about music and food, I'm now finding we're talking about parenting and the way our parents parented us and the meaning we made from that and how we've carried patterns and what we're doing to disrupt it in our kids. So I do think that it is possible. I often think it takes a bit of a turning point.
Mm-hmm.
It could be a diagnosis. It could be a decision, whether it's, leaving a relationship or getting sober or relocating. But often there's some sort of inflection point that causes a person to think, okay, I wanted to dig a bit deeper. I still have friends though, where we just talk about skincare. And that's cool because those friends have glowing skin and I do want to learn from them on that. And not every conversation has to be the super deep ones either. Like sometimes it's just nice to have a conversation about, what plants are you planting in your garden? And that's cool too. We need all kinds of friends in our lives for balance.
Yeah, that's what I think I'm finding is I think we need all three of those. I don't know. I guess we do. It's funny that my biggest fear when I quit drinking was that I didn't have any friends of virtue, that they were just drinking buddies. And then once we stopped drinking together, I'd be all alone. There wouldn't be anything to talk about. And I have found that it seems easier to have really deep, meaningful conversations with new people that maybe didn't know the old Bob. But I also think that I'm not giving my friends enough credit. And I think we just put people in boxes and like, oh no, those are the things that we do together. And just because we've never really gone deeper than that doesn't mean I shouldn't. I know they must be going through things that I'm going through. Just because we haven't talked about it doesn't mean they're not going through it. Maybe somebody just needs to go first. So I'm just noticing the difference between, I know it's easier to just go out and find a bunch of new people that want to talk about this, but that's also kind of boring. And there's a lot of history and intimacy in these existing friendships that, is really, really important to me. And maybe I'm just not giving my friends enough credit.
Mm.
Okay, amazing. Whose turn is it?
It's my turn to ask you a question.
It's your turn.
And we're actually going to pick up on something that you've talked about a little already in this discussion, which is your sobriety journey. It is something I so admire about you and the way that you're intentionally living your life. And it's something I hope at some point I will embrace also. However, I recognize it must require many difficult conversations with yourself to stay the course and not deviate from the path, conversations with people in your life, particularly those who, to your point earlier, they know Bob in this capacity. He's our drinking buddy. Bob is fun. They might, in fact, want that Bob to show up because it might give them a level of permission in their own life, or it brings some other value, fun times, to their world. What kinds of conversations have you had to have in order to stay on this journey through to your 5th year with yourself and with other people? And what has enabled you to have those conversations in a way that has helped you stay the course, but also to preserve those relationships? Or maybe you haven't. Maybe you've had to shed some of those relationships.
I would say most of the conversations are with myself. I've certainly had conversations with virtually all of my friends about it. But let's start with the conversations with myself. I wish I could tell you that it was a really, really difficult journey through these 5 years. And not that I wish I could tell you. I just think that's what people expect to hear. The truth is that the last 6 months of my life before quitting were really hard. And I should have quit weeks, months, arguably years before I did. So by the time that I finally decided to do it, it was the only option left. And I had negotiated with myself and tried every different combination of, well, I just won't have a drink before 4, or I won't drink wine and beer, and I won't drink liquor and beer, and I won't drink beers over 6%, and I won't drink on Sundays. I tried every conceivable combination of trying to establish boundaries around this thing until the only option left is not having that first drink. And so when I finally made that decision, yes, the first year was really hard, having to go to my first concert, have my first long weekend, do my first boys weekend, go on my first boys trip. All of these things that when I first quit, I'm like, I guess I'm just never doing those things again, because they were so booze soaked events. But I think by the time I did it, I was ready. And it was really more a journey of trying to discover who I really was without this thing that had basically accompanied me on every social interaction that I had since I was 17 years old. I can count on one hand in 35 years how many weekends I didn't drink. So it was a conversation with myself about, yeah, this is going to be deeply awkward. And most of it probably, Michelle, was around how I made other people feel. I didn't want to make people feel awkward. I wanted people to still get hammered around me if that's what they wanted to do. but it was this awkward sort of tension between us that never existed before, because it was always about just getting together, dropping the hammer, and letting the night play out as it always did, and just get up in the morning and talk about our regrets and maybe start all over again if it was a Saturday or Sunday. So it was really the conversation with myself that I think were the hardest.
What shifted things for you from I don't want to make people feel awkward to it sounds like this clarity that you have that, perhaps it's not about them feeling awkward, or that putting yourself first and prioritizing your own recovery is more important than other people's potential experiences of discomfort. What was that shift like? How did you make it?
I think for me, it was just kind of getting the reps in. Um, I had never been to a wedding sober. I had never been to a funeral sober. I had never gone to a dinner party with 8 of my closest friends in the world without having 3 or 4 drinks before I left, just to loosen up. Like, these are people that I've known my whole life, and yet I still needed that crutch. So once I just got over that and got through the first long weekend, all those first, I think the first year was really important because I just needed to prove to myself that I could do it. And I would say the first year was sort of like proving that I could do it. The second year was, so let's say the first long weekend was about proving I could do it. The second long weekend was proving that I wasn't going to be was proving that I could have just as much fun. And actually, it was like the third time where I could realize this is actually more fun. I don't know if it took me 3 years, but something happened between maybe it was almost 3 years, where it's like, holy shit, this is actually more fun. And when people would say that to me, Michelle, when I was partying and drinking, like, oh, I have just as much fun drinking. I'm like, you're a fucking loser. You are not. You're just not doing it properly. Like, nobody's shown you how to properly drink. Let me show you how to drink. And then frickin' 11 o'clock, I'm frickin' crawling around in the backyard. You see how much fun we're having? But yeah, that was the evolution. It's like, yes, I can do this. I can be just as much fun. And holy shit, this is actually so much better. And not only those things that I used to rely on alcohol, but everything, every single thing in my life is so much better.
Oh, wow. Well, I really want to dig into that. But I'm curious, in those moments, in those first 2 years where you were trying to prove it to yourself that I can do this, right? What did you say to yourself in those moments when you felt tempted to go back and drink?
Yeah, people have asked me that before. It's interesting. I don't think I've ever actually really seriously been tempted. There are things that I miss. I miss red wine with steak. I don't think I'm ever going to have a steak in my life and not imagine how much better it would taste with red wine. But there's really no good non-alcoholic red wine.
There really is not.
No, there is not. There's good beer and even some of the sparkling whites and stuff, but I don't really enjoy it that much to bother, because I'm going to have one glass out of that bottle and then pour the rest out. So there are things that I miss. Camping sober is unbearable. And I don't mean, like, I shouldn't say that. That's not true. I still love being out in nature with my friends and my kids, but going to sleep, crawling into my tent and sleeping on the ground sober fucking sucks. It will never not suck. I just have to be so active and exhausted by the time I crawl into my tent that I can't possibly stay awake. That's the only way I will get sleep. Otherwise, I'm getting about 2 hours sleep.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah.
Golfing also sucks sober. Because I don't golf. I'm really trying really hard to like it. I used to love it. Man, we were doing shots and on the greens and having drinks. It was a lot of fun. I don't think I've had fun on the golf course since I quit, but I'm not giving up. I know it's possible. But yeah, so there are things that I miss, some things that are not as much fun, but 99.9% of everything else is much better.
What about the conversations you've had to have with other people? Have you had to have tough conversations with friends in your life, family members, people who maybe are encouraging you to fall off the wagon, or who you've had to set boundaries with?
I don't remember any really hard conversations. Certainly conversations around, I think I had to put my reps in, but my friends did too. Like we just had to redefine this relationship. And Bob's not going to be the guy that's shutting down the party at 1:30 anymore. He's probably going to be the first one to leave. But I think it was just about, my friends had to relearn all of these things too. And I don't think it really, a lot of people talked to me about what it was like. And a lot of people have told me, yeah, you know what, just like you did, I've been thinking about it. I think it's just a matter of time, but I'm just not quite ready yet. And I'm like, yeah, no problem, man. Like, I am 100% convinced that me and every one of my friends will quit drinking. You might be 90, you might be 85. I just went first. That's the only thing that makes me different. You're all going to do it. And if I played a small part in accelerating your decision, I feel good about that, because there's never in the history of humanity been somebody that quit and regretted it.
This is very true. And often I reflect on the people that I hold up and I admire most in my life. Almost all of them are sober. Almost all of them are sober, really. And I think about the people who are the opposite, the people who do have challenges in terms of addiction to alcohol, and they speak openly about how that gets in the way of their creativity, of their relationships, of their health and well-being. So, in fact, I'd love to hear for you, what are your top 2 or 3 maybe benefits or improvements that you've seen in your world from quitting drinking, for those of us who just need to hear that, to hopefully help us to make that decision ourselves.
I'm happy to give the benefits, but I will say, Michelle, that there's no secret benefit or list of benefits that anybody could have given me that made a difference. I changed because I had no other choice. And sure, the benefits are, you know what? Everybody keeps telling me how much greater my sleep's going to be. I still suck at sleep. I haven't really gotten awesome sleeps like I was promised. So that was kind of a bummer. But just not waking up with the anxiety and the regret of things that I might have said, things that I might have done. I used to wake up on Sunday mornings and I would avoid asking my kids questions because I had a feeling that I had already asked them. And I didn't want them to know that I'd asked them a question after a bunch of drinks and didn't remember the answer or didn't remember the conversation. So there's, and now if I don't remember a conversation, it's just because I'm getting old, just has nothing to do with booze. And that still happens all the time. So there are benefits. Yeah. I mean, all of the things that you've been told are true. But to me, it's the comfort in my own skin that I wasn't expecting. I tell this story. I was at a retreat last year put on by Vienna Waits. I mentioned it earlier. And during one of the dinners, there's maybe 20 people around a big, long table. We've all been around boardrooms or dinner tables. And everybody's going around and doing a reflection. Maybe, I don't remember whether it was something that we had taken away from the day or whether it was an introduction into why we were there. Doesn't matter. And every other time in my life, Michelle, that I've done that around at work or around a dinner table, I wasn't listening to a single thing that anybody before me was saying because I was running through in my head what I was going to say. What am I going to say? What am I going to say? Should I be funny? Should I be emotional? What am I going to say? I didn't hear a word anyone said. And this was the first time where I consciously focused on what every person said and did not give 1 second thought to what was going to come out of my mouth until it was my turn and I opened my mouth and I said something. And then everybody after me, I used to sit there and I wasn't listening to anybody after me either because I was thinking, oh, how did that sound? Did I stumble? Did I slur? Nope. So that it came around to my turn. I blurted out. I have no idea what I said. And then I went back to listening to the people around me. And that's impossible I just found a comfort. It's like, I don't know what's going to come out of my mouth, but I know it's going to be honest and true. And you know what? It's actually better than anything I could have rehearsed. I would have people come up to me saying, "Oh my God, I didn't know that about you," or that what you said really affected me. And I'm like, I'm not even sure what I said, but I think it's just that level of comfort that I can walk into any room without a drop of alcohol in me, be myself. Maybe I'll say something smart, maybe I won't. And it's all okay.
I love that. I love that both of those benefits, quote unquote, speak to your ability to be really present for other people, to be a great listener. But I also just think about what you shared earlier with your curiosity journey and how sobriety has enabled you to tap into that realization that you are a creative person and to embrace that. It seems like this journey has enabled you, and it's helped you to become more of who you are, right? It feels like some filters have been lifted that were not helpful for you, and you are being you're grounding yourself in who you are authentically and developing more trust with yourself to show up as that person.
Yes, trust in myself, confidence, absolutely. And that I don't remember that being on the list of benefits that anybody.
No.
And again, I don't think any list of benefits that anybody could have given me would have made me change, but it's the thing that's made, it's been the best gift that I just didn't even know I needed. Okay, my last question, it kind of hits on a couple of different things we talked about. You just mentioned addiction. So I want to talk a little bit about social media. Mm-hmm. If I asked you to open your phone right now, what would it say about the amount of time that you spend on social media a day?
Oh, this is going to be so boring for you and your listeners. It would say I spend maybe 15 minutes.
Oh my God.
And it's only on LinkedIn.
Okay.
So I made the deliberate choice years ago to delete Facebook. And 2 years ago, a year and a half ago, I deleted Instagram. I've never signed up for TikTok. I don't use any other platforms because genuinely I didn't feel that they were additive to my life. I felt that they were subtractive, that they were taking things away from me and the time that I have. LinkedIn, I use as a way of staying on top of current trends, but also I'm a business owner and it's the most powerful channel that I can market and talk about the work that I do, but also add value, give insight or any sort of resources or anything that might help other people in their corporate lives. I work in equity, diversity, and inclusion. But for me, the other social media platforms I just found were not healthy for me. To be quite honest, Instagram, I found when I became a new mom, was just filled with all of these, I would say, facades of parents who had it all together with their perfectly curated meal plans and prep and their beautifully tidied homes and their perfectly behaved kids who are wearing the same matching outfits as them and, their postpartum bodies that are something that you would see on the runway somewhere. It just felt so fake to me. And perhaps people are living that life and that's a joyful life for them. That's wonderful. It didn't feel like seeing that was helpful for me. I constantly felt like I wasn't measuring up. I felt like I was dropping balls because you do, being a new parent. Inevitably, you're going to drop balls. And for me, like my house is not always as tidy as I would like it to be. I would love my house. I mean, I know my backdrop looks really curated. Take 2 steps this way. There's Lego all over the floor, right? My kids have video games everywhere. It's impossible, to have it all together. And maybe you can, but it's at a cost. And for me, that cost was in terms of my mental health and the time that I have to do things like exercise, read, play with my kids, connect with my friends, volunteer. So I just didn't like the way that I was comparing my life to the curated and often fictionalized lives of other people. I found that it caused me to do a lot of kind of self-judgment. Mm-hmm. And I didn't want that. The other thing, and maybe this is a bit controversial, the other thing that helped me to make the decision was I found it was enabling lazy friendships. So people who I maybe hadn't talked to in a couple years, I'd run into them and they'd say, "Oh, I see you have 2 kids and I see that you won this award and congratulations on this other thing." And number one, I don't love that people have access to private information about me without doing, and it's not even private, but they haven't done any work. They haven't called me. They haven't, even in that conversation, they haven't asked any follow up questions to get to know, what did that mean for you? What was that like? Tell me about it. None of it. It was this happened to you. Well done. Let's talk about something else. And it just felt so transactional. It felt kind of off-putting, actually. So for me, it was like, no, if you actually want to know about what's going on in my life, there's this velvet rope around me, right? And
Yeah.
I'm controlling the latch, and I will open that latch up if you are someone who I want to share that with, and you're somebody that I trust. That's not to say I don't disclose things on LinkedIn. I absolutely do. But there are a lot of things that I choose to kind of keep to the folks who invest time and energy in maintaining a real relationship with me. I also noticed that when I took myself off social media, no one remembers my birthday at all. So my 40th birthday a couple years ago, I received very few messages. Family members forgot. People who I would consider in my very tight core did not remember because Instagram, whatever, was not telling them it was my birthday. That honestly was really clarifying for me. If I am not a good enough friend for you to put my birthday in your calendar, then maybe I need to reevaluate our friendship. And I know that sounds cold and crass, and I know I've just talked about how I'm making all these new friends. I have time for friends for sure, but I'm not just handing out time willy-nilly to people who are not willing to reciprocate, and to take the time to be there in good times and bad. So I've actually started to shed a number of friendships that I felt were quite one-sided. And I think removing myself from social media has really enabled that. So there's this shallowness and superficiality that I found I was enabling by being on those media that I no longer worry about. I also don't spend any time. I don't waste time. And a lot of my friends, I'll travel with friends. They wake up in the morning. The first thing they do is they're scrolling their Instagram and they're on there for an hour. And then they're talking about, I don't have time in the day to exercise or to meditate or to call my mom. You do have time. It's just get rid of, that distraction, and you'll realize how much time you were absolutely just burning on things that actually deplete you. So I am all for what you talked about earlier. Sometimes we don't need a huge, extravagant retreat. We don't need to get on an airplane to reset some things in our lives. We can literally just remove the icon from our phone or set parameters, only 10 minutes a day, only these accounts, or better yet, call a friend, have a conversation in order to get the clarity we want.
The way that you describe that, Michelle, in terms of the benefits, I think there are a lot of parallels between what I described in drinking. Like, I look at you as a sober person, as a social media sober person going, damn it. Now, I haven't been on Facebook in years. I'm not on TikTok, but I do on Instagram and LinkedIn. And I want to come back to LinkedIn in a second. But it did strike me when I went away on this retreat and did this detox, and I came back and I opened up Instagram, just how fucking gross it felt. What a collision of worlds. This matrix curated, fabricated, fake, full of what you call lazy friendships, and the real, authentic, honest Bob that would kind of emerge from the woods after those 3 days. And they collided. And I'm like, oh my God, this is so gross. But you know what? In 3 days, I didn't think anything about it. And now I don't know what my screen time would tell me, but it's way too much. And I did take LinkedIn off my phone, which actually made a huge difference. So I'm spending a lot less time on that than I used to. So I'm very conscious of it. It's a lot like drinking, and then it's just a numbing effect. Like those people that get up and scroll through Instagram, they're just, their mind is just occupied. They're not thinking about anything. Hopefully they're not getting too wound up about negative stuff that in their feed, but it's just a numbing effect. It's kind of like having a drink. And you add
Yeah,
that up over the course of a day and a week, you've got enough time to do everything you've ever dreamed of doing. Write a book, start a
absolutely.
podcast, start a new business. You just
Right?
got to get rid of this thing. Yeah.
Well, and so much of social media is being used to show the world that we're having fun, that our life is great. And in fact, often the performance of that is taking away from us having fun and enjoying our lives. I can't tell you how many outings I've been on with people who are constructing the perfect image of them having a great time, but they are fucking miserable, right? Because like literally they're about to be swept into the ocean because there's waves, but they're just trying to make it look like they're having such a great time. I mean, you could spend your energy and time trying to convince other people of the kind of life you live, or you could devote that energy to living the kind of life that you want to live.
Yeah.
And it's enough for you to know it. It's enough for you to know that you're happy. It's enough for you to know that you're fulfilled. It's enough for you to know that you're doing things that are adventurous or that are meaningful. It's enough for you to know that your kids are thriving. We don't have to look to other people for that validation. It really, I mean, the call is coming from inside the house. You got to work on that, your relationship with yourself and being the cheerleader and being the person that probably you're hoping someone else is going to be through the likes or the comments for you. Because at the end of the day, those comments, that I don't know, that assurance, that validation is not always going to be there. I mean, I found this myself. There were a number of really great milestones I experienced in a period of a year and a half. I had my 40th birthday. I won one of Canada's top 100 most powerful women. And then I won an award from Google for advancing gender equality in the workplace. Those were three really big things in my world. And very few people actually showed up for me at all. I didn't receive a phone call at all of when I was nominated or when I was awarded those awards. It was really destabilizing and disappointing for me that I didn't receive that kind of, I'm proud of you. Talk to me about this, anything like, what are you going to wear? Or, what does this mean for you? Or, how did this happen? Anything. I didn't get that. And it was a hard realization that number one, maybe those friendships aren't the friendships that I want to, maybe they're not those friendships of virtue. I need to find those people if they're not there already and invest in developing those relationships. But number two, I got to be more of that for myself. And that has been the big change in my last couple of years has been, how am I going to be that person who says, Michelle, you're doing it. Like, well done. This is amazing. Go out and like, just soak this in.
I've been thinking lately about could you or me run a business without LinkedIn? I mentioned this to somebody lately, and her immediate reaction was, oh, no, you can't do that. It'd never work. And when somebody says that to me, I'm like, that's bullshit. Like, you realize that 99% of the businesses on this planet run with people that have never even heard of LinkedIn or been on LinkedIn. It's just that we are trapped in this little corner of the economy where we're sold that this is the only way for you to expand, for you to get your voice out. And lately, I'm thinking, what if I just turned it off?
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
how would I do it? I mean, I don't know. Would I mail flyers out? Would I don't know. There is a way to do it. And I can tell you, after coming back from that retreat and feeling that collision of those two worlds, I'm like, if I could completely divorce my life from social media of all kind, including LinkedIn, I would be happier. I just have to figure out how to pay the bills.
And when you figure that out, please do share with
I
me and
know.
with your listeners. I do struggle with LinkedIn too. I would be lying if I said that, I don't feel disappointment after I've spent time and energy and thought putting something out there that does not receive views because the algorithm is suppressing it because I'm using words like equality or people aren't responding, they're not reacting. It is actually quite deflating. And so, I'm not, I know this is a bit hypocritical because I do still feel like I'm a bit tethered to the machine here. And impacts how I feel at times. The other thing I've been noticing is my inbox on LinkedIn is just flooded with people who want something from me.
Yes.
It just feels so transactional these days.
Well, I am going to seriously look into this because I know there's a way to do it. And it feels terrifying. Every dollar that I've made in the last 5 years has come directly or indirectly from LinkedIn, but that doesn't mean it always has to be that way. So, and I know there are people doing it. I have a feeling it's one of those things like kind of, quitting drinking and then watching movies being like, holy shit, everybody's drinking all the time. I have a feeling that if I started this conversation, people are like, oh yeah, I know. Yeah, there's a whole sub community of people that are doing this. And I would be willing to make half the amount of money if I could figure out a way to do it without any kind of social media. And I would disappear, and you know what? Nobody would even notice.
Except for when they get that flyer in their mailbox.
Yes. Or maybe one of those planes that flies through the air with a banner behind it with my telephone, like my landline phone number on it.
Oh my gosh. Or we'll all be like realtors. We're just going to start doing billboards, bus station posters, benches.
Yeah, that shit's got to be really cheap now because nobody really spends their money on it. So yeah, bus, and then people could draw like a mustache or a goatee on my face.
I've always wondered what it would look like if I had a unibrow.
Yes.
This is how I'm going to find out.
Okay, yeah. Michelle, we're digging into this. Thank you, Michelle. We didn't even get to your irrational fear of birds, and I was really hoping that we would get to that. But you know what? We're going to save that for episode 3.
I can trauma bond with all those out there who have another fear of birds also. Stay tuned, folks. You'll see Michelle cry.
So awesome, Michelle. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. It's always a pleasure.
The Growth Mixtape podcast with Bob Mathers is produced by Bespoke Projects. Music by Jim Appel, Walter Cronkite. If you enjoyed this episode, please take a moment to follow and rate us. When you do this, it helps to raise our podcast profile so that more people can find us. If you want to connect, you can find me on LinkedIn using the link in the show notes.